Hey y'all, and welcome back to your exclusive tutorial for February. This month we are focusing on inks and paint, so I really wanted to show you a pretty simple way to make paint the main focus with a little bit of glitter bling, of course, and the way it's not just paint on a tumbler. It really has a lot of texture to really pack an impact, pack a punch. You know what I mean. So I am starting with a curved mug from the Tumbler supply store, and I painted it white, and I put some glitter in my epoxy, and the glitter is from my dump glitter collection. If you'd like to go check those out, they are on my website. And then I gave it one more coat of epoxy so that it was smooth, and then I did give it a little bit of a sand, and then this is how we make this amazing crackle. It is just Elmer's glue, white glue, and white paint. I have used other brands of paint before, but I tend to find personally for myself that I get a little bit better results with the Elmer's. I think because it's a little bit thicker than the other glue that I used, so it just seems to work better for me. What you're going to do is, it's easier for me to just pour out a bunch of the glue and the paint, and then just use my paintbrush to spread the glue all over the tumbler. You want a decent coat. You're not going to just brush it on like you're using it as a glue. You want a little bit thicker in some areas and then thinner in some, and then immediately, do not let it dry. You're going to paint on the white paint right over that glue, and try not to go back and forth, up and down. Do not go in opposite directions. You want to go from top to bottom, or bottom to top. And then immediately after you've covered the entire thing, you're going to go in with your heat gun and heat that. You can just let it air dry, but as we all know, I'm impatient. And as soon as you start heating it, you will see these cracks start to form. Try not to hold the heat gun too long in one area. You don't want to burn anything. And if you leave it in one spot too far, you can make the paint bubble up. So I just give it a good heating till it seems mostly dry, constantly moving that heat gun. And then I set it aside and let it dry completely overnight, because even though it's dry to the surface, sometimes the thicker spots of glue are still wet underneath. So once I let it dry overnight, I am going to add a little bit more distressing spots just because I like the look, but you don't have to do that. So I'm just taking my X-Acto knife and just kind of scratching it or peeling it off, cutting into some of that paint and just peeling off some areas, just so I have some few little areas that show a little bit more of that glitter. And here you'll see I'm just going to use the back of my X-Acto knife to just kind of scratch it off. I'm just kind of adding distress areas in a few different spots. Once I was done scratching it all up, I gave it a good coat of epoxy until smooth. It actually was one really thin coat and then another pretty thin coat, because I don't want to put too many layers on here, but I just want it to be smooth before we add this decal. I've had this decal for a while and I absolutely love it. It is from AB Designs Co. I do have a discount code down in the description box if you want to order from them. They have the absolute best decals. I love them. You can choose regular decals or an option to have them white on the back, which I always choose. That's what that little red dot you'll see on the back means, that it is a white backed decal. Once I discovered white back decals, I've never gone back, because They are perfect. You can add them to a dark or light surface. So I usually have no exact game plan when I order decals, so I always get white backed just to have it be available when I need it for whatever surface I decide to put them on. So here I'm just trimming the decal. I like to trim it to as close of the design as I possibly can, especially because we are adding this to a curved surface. So I'm going to show you how I did that to make it look flawless, like there was no bubbling or wrinkling going on. So the first thing I need to do is figure out where I am going to place it. It's hard sometimes with this handle because I always feel like it's in the center and then it doesn't quite end up in the center. So I'm always just an eyeballer. So I'm pretty much just putting my fingers where the real handle is and where a fake handle would be across from it and lining it up in the middle. And the first thing I did was cut a little bit off of the side, and then I realized this is not working the way I wanted it to, so I peeled that back off, and then I'm going to put some of the backing back on there and move the other side of the backing over a little bit. That way I only have the center exposed, because when you're trying to lay it down on a curved surface, it always tends to work better when you work from the center out or the center up and the center down. So you'll see me here in a minute change that paper on the back and then press firmly down the center. Here I am changing that paper location and then adding a little bit more to the side. Just place that back in the center and then press firmly down the center, and then we're going to work on one side at a time. Thankfully, this design has some spots that are really easy to trim. So what I'm going to do is press down the center of the side, and then right where the blue portion or the black portion of that butterfly wing meets the other portion of the butterfly wing, I'm just going to run my X-Acto knife through it so it cuts it into pieces. Then I'm going to just lay down that top portion. I'm going to pop a bubble right there, and then smooth out that top portion and then lay down the bottom portion, slightly overlapping it over that first portion, but because of the way this actual decal is, it makes it a lot easier to just lay it on top and you wouldn't even know. And then because we have more of a curve down here in the bottom, I'm going to do the same thing between one of those little designs, and it helps it lay down perfectly. Now for this side, I'm going to just cut down where some of these leaves are, press down that bottom portion, and then the same on the top. It's really just finding those little areas to cut and kind of overlap that help lay it down flat so you don't end up with wrinkles and bubbles. Once I have that all laid down completely flat, I am going to take my X-Acto knife and trim off that top edge and then give it 2 final coats of epoxy, and it's all done. You could add a name to the back, you could add some flowers, anything else, but I really wanted to keep this pretty simple. And I also wanted to note that you could use this crackle, you could do, instead of white paint, you could do a totally different color. I think I've only ever done it in white, but you could take this design and use it in many different ways. But that was it. It got its 2 final coats of epoxy and it was all done. I know that this was a fairly simpler tutorial, but I hope that you've gained some inspiration in some way and showing that inks and paints really can be the star focus and still be a beautiful tumbler. I know for myself, sometimes I forget and I feel like it needs to have all the things: decal, vinyls, glitter, foils, all the things, but sometimes a little bit less is more. So as usual, I'll leave all the information, the products that I use, where you can find me, down in the description box. And I hope y'all loved this. I will see y'all back in the group. Bye, y'all.